Joined now by Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. You can listen to his podcast, Scoop B Radio. He's also a writer for Basketball Society. Brandon, my friend, it is finally great to talk to you, buddy.
Gentlemen, it's good to speak to you as well. Congratulations on the new show.
Thank you, Brandon. And let's dive right into it. We've been talking a lot in the first hour about the Philadelphia 76ers and Brett Brown's direction in the draft. Tell me, what were your thoughts on the trade from Mikal Bridges to Zaire Smith and the Sixers' direction after the draft?
I mean, to use a pop culture reference with Mikal Bridges, it was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air never went to L.A. He stayed right in Philly or the Philly area. And then it broke your heart, you know. You look at a guy who, you know, at Villanova really excelled and improved his shooting percentage every year. I think this year, when I took notes for the draft, he ended up averaging like 45% from the three-point line. But you add in a guy with Zaire who is a guy who plays tall, you know, plays high octane and plays good defense. Brett Brown has compared him to Kawhi Leonard, and Brett Brown did have a front row seat to the days of Kawhi Leonard during his time as a staffer or an assistant coach with the San Antonio Spurs. So I think it was definitely a quick check reaction for Sixers fans because Mikal Bridges is what you're familiar with. But Zaire is going to have to prove himself, just like on this side of the Hudson in New York. Kevin Knox is going to have to prove himself out with the New York Knicks. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Zaire. But Mikal Bridges definitely leaves the greater Philadelphia area to a Phoenix Suns team that is on the up and up these days.
It's funny that you mentioned Kawhi Leonard, Brandon, because that's what Philadelphia fans expect out of this whole thing. They expect that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to at least attempt and maybe land Kawhi Leonard, especially after they acquired that unprotected 2021 first-round pick from the Suns via the Miami Heat. Do you believe that's the move that the Sixers are really targeting after they acquired that pick?
It's viable. You look at what everybody did leading into the draft, not just the Sixers. You look at the Nets and dumping basically their draft picks and a player that they didn't really need and getting Dwight Howard, who will get a buyout in his contract. But you look at what everybody's doing. They're trying to set cap space, even with the Indiana Pacers waiving their team option and getting rather in their team option and Lance Stevenson to, you know, go after local product Tyreek Evans. But when you look at what the Sixers have been able to do the last few years, really the last 4 years in the draft, going all the way back to Joel Embiid, Michael Carter-Williams, and then trading him, as well as Drew Holiday. And the Sixers have really been prudent and even to people's criticism and getting the best talent on the floor. And it seems that the Sixers are making that direction with getting Kawhi Leonard. And let's not mention, like I said before, he has a relationship with San Antonio Spurs. People think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to the Lakers. Why would you trade him to a rival team you have to see at least 4 times a year? At least with the Sixers and the Spurs, you see both teams home and away twice a year. So those are things to consider. And don't sleep on Paul George as well. To be honest with you, I think Paul George is a slower burn for the Sixers and gives you continuity, and he doesn't have to do it all by himself.
Brandon, speaking of the Sixers, you know, if you were in the front office, would you rather go big game hunting, or would you rather continue to try to build around Embiid and Simmons, try to upgrade the supporting cast around them?
I mean, thankfully, I'm not in that position. But if I was, I think it'd be interesting. I think when you look at the Philadelphia area right now, Villanova being national champions, the Eagles arguably returning with a stronger roster than what they ended with in winning the Super Bowl. And then, you know, you wonder, okay, the Sixers, they had a great playoffs. Granted, they were a young team that chased the Miami Heat out of the building, an older Miami Heat team. The pressure's on them in a sense because now they got to replicate what they started. You know, in hip-hop, they often say that the sophomore album is always the hardest to follow up on after having such a great first album. And I think that for the Philadelphia 76ers, the time is now. If you're impulsive, you go after LeBron James because he's been to multiple NBA finals with 2 different teams, and 2016 was truly a miracle for Cleveland. And when you look at Kawhi Leonard, a guy who I've often said this before is everything that Richard Jefferson was supposed to be, in that great defensive player, great offensive player. He's been quiet and let his team do the talking. And I'm sure he has something to prove after essentially sitting out for a year and resting that hammy while everybody else was talking. He kept working.
Sticking with LeBron, I read your article earlier today. I highly recommend that people go to basketballsocietyonline.com. You wrote about how LeBron may be making his announcement through Instagram TV. And focusing on LeBron, we've heard a lot about how his family is going to have a lot to do with his decision, that some people are saying that his wife and his kids are actually the gatekeeper for his decision. How much do you buy into the influence of his family? And if his family is truly a major driving force, how does that affect destinations for LeBron?
Well, I think it's interesting that a report came out today by Ramona Shelburne, and I think Adrian Wojnarowski contributed as well, saying that LeBron and his team were not really taking too many crazy team pitches. He's past that point. You know, he didn't go to college, so he was able to be wooed and recruited early on in the game in 2010 and, again in 2014. This is a more stoic LeBron, more coming-of-age LeBron, if you will. And you look at the body of work. Fellas, I don't know about you, but does Mercedes or Maybach have to prove that they're Mercedes or Maybach?
No.
Toyota might have to prove. Mitsubishi might have to prove, and there's no disrespect to any of those companies, but you see those cars in rap videos and on the main line in Philadelphia. So, at the end of the day, you look at the body of work that LeBron has created, and the odds say the Lakers are the favorite, but you can't count out Philadelphia. Cleveland can offer the most money. And then there's other teams out there. Would a return to Houston, a return to Miami make sense? So there's a lot of different factors. But then you also look at the fact that he's from Northeast Ohio, and he can't go out like he left the first time in 2010. We go with that coming of age thing. Today, June 25th, 22 years ago today, Jay-Z came out with Reasonable Doubt. And that was his first body of work. So you never forget the first time that you made a mistake or the first time that you won a championship. And Cleveland's a team that he won for the hometown crowd. And you can't kick them in their back. So he's got to kind of do it the right way and just be the businessman and professional that we know he can be, which is why the story that I wrote today about Instagram TV and all those other factors make sense.
How important is LeBron's brand and his future business in what he does? I think people forget that LeBron is much more than a basketball player. He's become an icon. He's become a symbol at this point.
Well, it's interesting. I was on a podcast over the weekend, and I made this comparison. Many people say, LeBron is this generation's Michael Jordan. I mean, you put the Michael Jordan 6 championship rings up there, and people automatically discredit LeBron. But I'm willing to argue LeBron James is our generation's Dr. J. Julius Erving. And I'll tell you why. Julius Erving played in both leagues and played in the championship, meaning the ABA and the NBA. Was traded, I believe, for $6 million from the Nets to the Sixers, and was a generational player. He brought slam dunking to the game in a sense, made it popular, wore the afro. When you look at LeBron, I don't think people are going to truly appreciate LeBron until maybe 10 years after he's retired, particularly as it relates to intellectual property, the digital game, and he's also benefited from Michael Jordan and the sneaker contracts, just like Kobe Bryant has. I think Kobe is more Michael than LeBron is Michael. And I think if people put Michael on such a high pedestal, well, how does he fare against Bill Russell? So I think at the end of the day, you have to be very careful when you're often putting such a high expectation on an unfinished product. LeBron is still evolving, and I think this next act, whether he signs with the Sixers, stays with the Cavs, goes to the Lakers, or wherever he chooses. Heck, he may go to Mars and the Toon Stars on Space Jam, for all we know. But I think you got to be really careful when you're constantly forcing greatness, because you don't actually get a chance to enjoy the product because you're putting such high expectations on what you expect. And I think LeBron has created his own legacy, and thankfully to Kurt Flood and his free agency, being able to to buck the system or do what he does, LeBron has the free will to do what he wants to do in the free agency period with the NBA.
We're talking with Brandon Robinson, host of Scoop B Radio and also a writer for Basketball Society. You can follow him on Twitter at Scoop B. That's at Scoop B. Brandon, before we get you out of here, I want to get your prediction on where do you honestly feel like LeBron is going to go, and then I'll give you the floor to kind of tell people who aren't really, familiar with you or what you do, kind of just elaborate on that.
Well, to your first question, the information that I received on Friday, I wrote it today. It's anybody's guess. If you had asked me before Friday, I probably would have told you that Philadelphia was a lock. I would have also told you that Miami was in the picture. Right now, my mind is kind of fried, and I can probably give you a better answer in a couple of days. But the piece that I wrote, it's a little more detailed. I left you some breadcrumbs. There'll be some more crumbs to eat throughout the process. But basically, all points currently, based off of the information that I've received, point to the Lakers, but we'll see what happens. I would love to see Sixers and LeBron be in one. A private jet ride from Akron, Ohio to Philadelphia ain't that far, and I'm sure someone can accommodate it. He can accommodate himself.
Well, Brandon, again, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope that we can catch up with you again soon. Again, you can follow him at Scoop B on Twitter. That's at Scoop B. And please read his tremendous work on Basketball Society. Brandon, thank you again.
Thank you. If I can, make sure you guys subscribe to the Scoop B Radio podcast, Google Play, TuneIn app, Stitcher app, or simply visit scoopbradio.com. We got 2 million downloads last year.
Definitely.
My man.
Brandon, appreciate the time. Take care.
Yes, sir. You too.